So we are finally going to speak about buttons, and we are going to start all the way from the different button types or button contexts. Then we move to button sizes, then button states, and what we mean by online buttons, just to give you a practical example of what happens. And as always, we are going to code this one out, not going to learn theory. So I'm just going to duplicate this. Sorry. The reason why I'm doing this over and over again is for you to remember that you can have a boiler template if you want to run your project quickly, but you should always give your page a title and also link the Bootstrap item. As always, let's wrap everything inside a container, and inside that container I'm going to have a h1 with a class of text success and margin y of 5, and it's buttons. Also, I'm going to have a heading 4 with text success and a margin top of 3. And the margin top that we are going to, the first topic is buttons in Bootstrap. I hope everything is fine on the browser. It's not, because it's still on containers, while we have moved on to buttons. I'm just closing all the rest, then saving to see if it's going to change. Yes, we are in business. So how do you put in a button class? So first of all, let's start. End of coding life, as always. End of coding life. I'm going to try and type as fast as possible so that you'll be able to cover a lot in this. So if I just have a button without any class in it, and I just say this is a primary button, if I go to the browser, you see it looks like this. This is the default Bootstrap button. If I didn't have the Bootstrap CSS linked and I save everything, look at this. This is how the default HTML5 button looks like. So if I uncomment that, it brings back the default Bootstrap button. Now, to understand this, we have just the same way we have different backgrounds, we have different types of buttons, and it just gives them a different type of text color and the background color. For example, if I just do several, like 7 buttons here, and we have a class of btn, because you have to apply a default class of btn, and then a btn class and the context, like this one is primary, and we pass through all this in background colors and also text colors. If I do that and I need 7 of them, it gives me in a line, which I didn't want that to happen. So let me just push them down. No wahala. It means no problem. So the first one is primary. If I just do primary here, and it's button primary, then after this is secondary. We've done this over and over and over. Success, then danger, warning. I'm just getting this from my head. Info. Then we used to have a light background, which let's see if it's also applicable to this. Then dark, and what a link is. So btn dark and btn link. I'm going to copy the same. Actually, let me just highlight this with Emmet so that we move faster. I promise that we are not going to take long. Then we move over and we paste. That's it. If we go to the browser, this is how it looks like. So This is primary, secondary, success, danger, and you see it gets the right text color or context to it. A button that is a link is also given as this, but as you can see, the cursor changes to a link when we get to here. Okay, but buttons are generally meant to be clicked, so that's why the cursor is generally going to be the same depending on your type of browser. With that, let's move on to button sizes. I'm going to copy this and paste it down. We don't need all this because button sizes are not so many, and I'm going to, you need to first give the btn class and then decide if it's a big button or a small button. So normally that's the shape of the size of a button, but if I want to actually add it to become small, it's going to look like this. You see, this is the normal. Primary is the normal, then secondary I've added btn sm for small, for it to become smaller like this, and then I'm going to add btn lg for it to become bigger. You see, it boosts or pops up the button to become bigger. So those are button sizes. And if you ask me, this is also important because we used to just go and add padding, margin until we will be able to achieve such a thing. So let's learn about button states, and the states is whether it is active or disabled. Again, it's just a quick one where you say here it is sizes, button sizes. This one is button states. I'm using the same 3 buttons in the beginning. So this is the normal button. If I want this one to be active, it just shows, I mean to be disabled, I just add the class of disabled. Come here, you see, becomes, and actually let me just use primary so that you see the difference for all of them. Okay, if I save this and you go, you see they're all primary, but this one is active. The first one, the one with the secondary data, is disabled. We can change this to become disabled, and this one is active, and we can add the class of active to it. It's basically just some deep color to it. So this one is the normal one, this one is disabled, this one is active, and that's the states that we will always have. It's either a link is active or a button has been clicked or not clicked. That informs the button states of being disabled or active. So what are online buttons? But to understand what they are, I'm just going to give examples again. Online buttons. Sometimes to edit is much more. And the difference between normal context and online buttons is just adding the, let me save this. You see, this is the normal buttons, the way that it is. Let's add the it's not online, I misspelled that. It's outline buttons. So if you want to have an outline, it's going to have a border around here. So it's as simple as just adding the outline flag to it. So instead of button primary, we will say btn hyphen outline, then primary. So it gets the context, as you can see, blue, primary border and primary text. If I go all the way down, giving each the different context. I don't know how I said btn online, online button instead of outline button. Then do hyphen, save that, everything is going to be changed. So it just gets the context color. If it's secondary, the border is secondary and the text is also secondary, etc., depending on what you are doing with the text or the context that you choose. If it's a link, because links also behave differently, and this one I'm going to use danger button, and these 3 are the best to use. If it is a link, button links. I don't know if that's proper grammar, but danger, and I'm going to remove this and this. Let's see how it looks. Yep. So if you want to have this one as a link, be it I don't know how to actually explain this apart from using a link item instead of a button item. So we can actually format links to become buttons depending on how I wanted to use other items, but I could not find another item that you can use a href item on it. So this href is where you are going to place your what is it called, the link on it. So if I save that and I go back, see, it's a link, but it's actually designed as a button. So that's how you're able to apply all these classes to it. Okay. Next, we are going to, let me see, this one is danger. Let's see if we are going to have other contextual classes also applied to it, like the size and disabled and etc. So if I just apply here the href, because it's a button at the end, it needs where you're linking to, then I press this and I say disabled. Let's see. Yes, it's disabled. So the contextual classes are still applied to it. Then after that, I can also apply things like sizes. Let me see. Href. Then we do a hash. Then remember btn sm. Let's say want a small. Yep, and it applies the contextual class as well. So you can actually convert links to become buttons, and that's an amazing thing to know, because sometimes you don't want it to be obvious that it's a link, or you don't want to create a button and then, because buttons just do a specific action inside the page itself. With that, let's move to block buttons, where we remember stacking, where we did stacking using divs. We can also do the same using buttons. We first copy this and we can do button groups, and here it says button groups. Then come here and say, I don't know if this is reflecting button groups. I don't know why is it. Okay, I see why. So we had and this happens. Remember, you start an anchor tag, you have to finish with an anchor tag. And this, it was looking for. Yes, we're back to business. That's why I was wondering where there is no space between the elements here, because that's default spacing. Okay, so what are button groups? Button groups are basically that. They are just a button group. So the way you do it is you just have a div that encloses them. You don't have a class that's called div with a class of button group. You don't need to do a btn class before, but it's just a button group. And then, and for area which is accessible rich applications, which is used by the disabled, you need to put what the role is, and the role is a group. And this, it's not a must, but it's important for the disabled, the ones who are trying to use screen reader applications. Inside the button group, I can actually copy these three or these three and just put them in. It's as simple as that. Just wrap your buttons inside a button group, and this is how it is going to appear. See, it's next to each other, with the leftmost and the rightmost having rounded corners. When we remember, we passed through the rounded borders section, so you'll understand that. If that is understood, we can now learn about the button toolbar. Similarly, because we have a button group, and we also know that we can enclose our buttons inside a button group, we can also learn about the button toolbar. And the button toolbar is basically a group of button groups. And the way to put it is this. So I'm going to have this copied because it's a new section, and it's button toolbar. I'm going to create a div with a class of button toolbar. Okay, toolbar, and the way to have it is I'm going to copy this button group here and put it here. If I copy and I save and take it to the browser, you see there's no change. But watch what happens when I actually apply another button group here. See, it actually holds them, the different button groups, in what is it called, in inline, because you can see if this were just one button group, it's only the leftmost and the rightmost which will have this kind of borders, but here you see several of them actually have. If we are going to actually have some margin end of 3, let me save that and see. Yes, it's put some space into it. So that's how you're able to create a button group, and you can have as many as possible, and it doesn't have to have this type of text. You can actually just put, maybe it's page numbers instead of breadcrumbs. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen this somewhere. If I save, you see it now makes sense, right? So that's how you use button groups in place, button toolbar, to accommodate the different types of, what is it called, button groups. Now we've held the items in an inline fashion. What if we handle them in a block format? And that's where we use the stacking order. To use that, let me again, my favorable h4, I'm going to use it here and say button stacking. And the proper way to actually do it is just to put them in a grid, put the buttons in a grid. So I'll have a div with a class of the grid. These are flex options, and then how you want. So that's a vstack. Remember the vstack, and remember we said, actually let me create it with that and put it in. If I take these 3 buttons, put some buttons in it, go down, you see it goes through the whole width of the browser, and it just shows like this. But if I want to put some space between them here, remember I can use the class of gap, and I want to put a gap of 3, and now we have some items in it. So that's how you're also able to stack the buttons in a vertical format. That said, let's proceed to the next video, where we're going to learn about navigation, and more specifically the nav bar. See you then. Bye bye.